Back now on Race for the White House live tonight from San Francisco. Pleased to be joined now after another troubling day on Wall Street with the Dow plunging 450 points. Pleased to be joined by the chairman and the CEO of Google, obviously one of the biggest companies in the world right now, and want to get his perspective from the Google campus in Mountain View, California. Dr. Schmidt, good to have you on the program.
Yes, hi. Thank you for having me.
I'm obviously pleased to be out here in California to take part in your company's Zeitgeist conference today, which was so interesting, and it was an honor to be involved. Also interested in terms of, we talk about the small effects in parts of our economy and how it has larger effects on the rest of the global economy, as well as dealing with the kind of changes that are rocking the marketplace right now. And it all kind of comes back to what we're seeing happen and playing out in our financial markets. So my first question to you is, Google is not a company that is highly leveraged. There's a lot of cash on hand. It's unlike what the investment banks are going through. And yet, do you feel the impact of what's happening on Wall Street?
Only through our friends. Google, as you know, has a large cash position, and we believe in cash. We don't use debt in any particular way. We're fortunate that way. My view is that this could ultimately affect us and everybody else if it ultimately leads to some form of business contraction. So it's incredibly important that the people who manage to get us into this mess get us out of this mess really, really quickly.
And yet, when there's an environment where the credit markets freeze up, where there's no lending going on, it's not good for your business either, right? I mean, you're big enough to absorb it, but you still feel it.
No, and of course we could feel it. And the important thing here is, if people are not being able to get credit, let's get the credit to them now somehow, right? Because the economy needs the credit structure. And ultimately, sure, people buy products. We need them to be able to do it. Absolutely.
There's been some discussion in the administration about more regulation of short sellers in the view of what's happened on Wall Street of late. Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, it's clear that the whole area was not regulated enough. I'm not enough of an expert to know that short sellers are part of the problem. We do know that there was a disconnect from an agency perspective where people could sort of give money and then immediately give the risk to somebody else. So they never paid the right penalty for the errors that they made in giving out too much credit. So that's the problem that needs to get solved. And there's a long history there. So it just seems to me that the quicker we can figure out the right sort of structure and the right sort of risk incentives, the quicker we can all get back to work. America is enormously creative, and one of the great things about America is that when we get to the bottom, and I hope it's this week, we very, very quickly climb right back out. People have short memories, they move on. So let's use this as an opportunity to get the structure right. Let's make sure that people who have the right incentives also have the right positives and negatives for them personally.
I want to ask you about challenges for the next president, including in the area of the environment and energy, which I know you care a great deal about. But from your vantage point, here we are in a political campaign where the economy is being debated every day. It's overshadowing every issue. But you run Google. What is your assessment of the state of this country's economy?
Well, we see the traffic and we see what people are doing. And most analyses, and we concur, indicate that if we're not in a recession, we're sort of in a flat part. We know that people are buying things, but they're buying them at less of a rate. And so we know that there's some kind of a slowdown going on. Whether it's a recession or not, it's a naming problem. The government needs to act, and the government needs to act to get people going again. And the quickest way for them to do that is to use the various stimulus proposals that are in discussion today. It's interesting that everybody's focused on the next president, but the current Congress has to act right now.
And is there a leadership test for not only those who are in Congress and indeed the president, but also these candidates who are debating these issues? And what is that leadership test for them at this stage?
Well, it seems to me that between now and November 4th, both of the leading candidates are trying to maximize the chance of them getting elected. And for obvious reasons, they're figuring out where the strengths and weaknesses are. This was a systemic failure that a lot of people participated in over many, many years. It requires a fairly lengthy conversation about why do the checks and balances in our financial system get so screwed up. And I'm not going to suggest that one presidential candidate or another will fix that better than the other. It seems to me that it is a systematic problem, and it's an opportunity for the current people, the people in their jobs today, to fix this now, rather than being distracted by all this other excitement.
But there is a lot of fear out there. I mean, not just on Wall Street, but average Americans have fear about their jobs and about their financial standing.
Well, people depend on credit, and they depend on credit for lots and lots of things. And of course, we're seeing the ending of a multi-year housing bubble. When you start calling it a bubble, maybe it's time to burst it ahead of time so that people don't go through this pain right now.
Right.
The important thing here is that as the financial industry gets itself recapitalized and as credit gets restored, hopefully in a day, right, people will move past this and we'll get back to the kind of optimism that characterizes American business.
You know, there's been an issue that's come up on the campaign trail about whether these candidates and their running mates would be capable of running the government or running a major corporation. When you think about Barack Obama, you think about John McCain, you think about Sarah Palin or Joe Biden, do you think they're capable of running a company like Google?
What I learned is that the characteristics to be a successful politician are different from the characteristics of being a successful CEO. Different set of problems, different set of opportunities. One does not make the other. People in business often end up going into politics. Often the politicians are better than the people from business going into politics. I don't know why.
Let me ask you about something that I know was discussed today that you talked about, that in the political world there tends to be a shorter-term focus, whereas business leaders like yourself often have a longer-term vision for challenges in the country. And talk about that. As you look toward the next president and this campaign, what are the longer-term challenges that the next leader is going to face?
Well, first place, the current dialogue is so short-term oriented, it's difficult to break out of that. So let's talk about great leadership. A great president, a great future president, will be able to articulate a longer-term vision than this month or this crisis or what have you. And what they're fundamentally going to do is they're going to bring back some form of optimism, a sense of balance. So, for example, all those people who were hurt in the financial crisis, they need some form of recompense. They need some sort of hope. They need some sort of solution, which ultimately involves job creation, investment, successful business creation, those sorts of things. We need to repair all of our issues with respect to international relations and free trade and all those kinds of things so that we can have really, really successful businesses. So from a business perspective, we take a much longer term because we're going to be here. Our buildings and our companies and so forth are going to be here for a long time. We're working hard, for example, on climate change because climate change is the longest term issue facing America and indeed the world. But if we don't start now, we have to address it sometime. So why not now? Mm-hmm. And the great thing about business, unlike, for example, government, is that business can take the capital and apply it now. So we can invest now to have savings later. And it's very difficult for the government to do that.
And finally, what would you like to see government do as a catalyst in the area of the environment and energy as we move forward?
Well, it just seems to me that there's a huge crisis in front of us, this whole issue of the government slowing down, all the problems that we've talked about. So what's going to happen is the government is going to do a stimulus package. So rather than just giving all the money to the normal suspects, why don't we have it be focused around solving the renewable energy problem in the following way? Let's rebuild the energy infrastructure of America. Let's literally solve the gas problem once and for all. Let's solve the pollution problem once for all. Let's get oil prices going down because of less demand. And there are a number of proposals to do this all over a 10 or 20-year period that for some number of billions of dollars, but less than much of what we pay today, we could literally invest in America. We could invest in the infrastructure, the engineers, the technicians, the technology. We could replace the current fossil-based infrastructure by coal, by solar, by wind, and by enhanced geothermal over the next 10 to 20 years, creating jobs, exports, and increasing our energy security. The next wars are going to be about oil, so why don't we take oil away? Why don't we just take it out of the equation and solve the problem from an energy independence perspective with money now?
All right. A big debate that will go forward. Eric Schmidt, the chairman and CEO of Google, taking time off from the terrific Zeitgeist Forum today on the Google campus in Mountain View, California. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
And thank you very much for coming and speaking, and the comments were phenomenal.
Thank you. Thank you very much.